I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by cornfields that stretched as far as my eyes could see. My life was a mix of tranquility and isolation. The vastness of the fields always fascinated me and, at the same time, made me feel small. During the day, the cornfield seemed like a magical place where I could play and lose myself in childhood adventures. But at night, the rows of corn turned into a dark labyrinth, each stalk transforming into a twisted, menacing silhouette. It was one of those summer nights, when the heat of the day still lingered in the air and the sky was clear enough to walk without a flashlight, that I decided to cut through the cornfield to get home faster. The idea seemed simple. I'd save at least 20 minutes instead of going around the main road. The cornfield was familiar to me, and I believed I knew its secrets. But that night showed me that there was something more, something deeply wrong. As soon as I entered the field, the sound of the outside world disappeared, and the only noise left was the rustling of the corn leaves bumping against each other. The smell of damp earth mixed with pollen filled the air, and everything was too quiet. I walked quickly, knowing exactly the direction I needed to go, until suddenly I heard a sound. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I realized it was laughter, children's laughter. I stopped, trying to listen better, and the laughter stopped as well. I looked around, but all I saw were the endless rows of corn stalks. My heart began to beat a little faster, but I tried to convince myself that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I kept walking, increasingly alert, but the laughter returned. This time, louder, closer. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice sounding strange and muffled among the plants. There was no answer, only more laughter, now multiplying, as if several children were hiding among the rows. The sound seemed to echo, coming from all sides, and I began to turn around, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Fear grew inside me. That laughter wasn't normal. It had a distorted tone, something that was deeply wrong, almost inhuman. I began to walk faster, then run, the corn brushing against my face and arms as I forced my way through the rows. I could hear the laughter following every step, getting closer and closer, as if whoever was laughing was running after me, hidden among the shadows of the stalks. For a moment, I thought I saw something. A small figure, hiding among the plants, looking directly at me. A pair of shining eyes, reflecting the moonlight, blinking in the darkness. But when I blinked, the figure was gone, leaving only the rustling of the leaves in its place. I kept running, not looking back, the sound of my own breathing blending with the laughter that now seemed to be so many that it felt like it was coming from inside my own head. There came a point where I stumbled, falling to my knees on the hard ground. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. It was at that moment that I realized the laughter had stopped. Everything was silent, an absolute, suffocating silence. I slowly stood up, my knees aching, and looked around. The corn stalks rose like walls around me, impassable, and for a second, I felt like prey cornered. That's when I saw it. In front of me, a few meters away, was a shadow, a short figure, standing among the corn rows. It was small, maybe the size of a child, but I couldn't see any details. Just a silhouette that seemed to be watching me. I felt a shiver go down my spine, the kind of shiver that paralyzes you, that makes you forget even how to breathe. I stood there, staring at that figure, while it remained still. And then, it started to laugh. The laughter was so loud, so sharp, that I almost fell back. It was the same laughter I had been hearing, but now, so close, it was almost unbearable, as if it were resonating inside my skull. The figure moved a little, as if staggering forward, and then another laugh sounded, and another, from behind me. I was surrounded. Finally, my legs obeyed the instinct, and I ran. I ran without direction, just trying to get out of there. The corn leaves whipped against my face, and I could taste the dirt in my mouth, but nothing mattered except getting out of that place. The laughter continued, following me, matching every step until, finally, I saw the light of my house, a comforting glow in the middle of all that nightmare. I practically threw myself out of the cornfield, falling onto the dirt beside the house. When I looked back, the cornfield was quiet, still. No laughter, no figure, just the rustling of the leaves in the wind. I went inside, trembling, and my dad looked at me in shock, asking what had happened. Couldn't explain. How could I explain that something in the cornfield was watching me, following me? Something that laughed like a child, but that I knew wasn't human. I said nothing, just shook my head and went upstairs to my room, closing the door and locking it behind me. Since that night, I have never crossed the cornfield at night again. I prefer to go around, no matter how long the way is. The laughter never returned, but the feeling that there is something in there, something waiting for the next unsuspecting person to enter the field, has never left me. Sometimes when I'm outside at night, I think I hear, far away, the echo of laughter, a low sound, like the wind blowing through the stalks. Now, every time I see a cornfield, I feel that familiar shiver. The memory of the laughter, of those small dark figures, is still etched in my mind. I don't know what they were, spirits, ghosts, something beyond my comprehension, but I know that whatever it was alive in some way, and it was having fun at my expense. Something was lurking in the shadows of that cornfield, something that wanted to be seen, something that wanted to play, and for a moment I was its prey. I grew up in a small town where the nights were quiet and the cornfields seemed endless. It was on one of those nights, when summer was at its peak and the air was heavy, that my friends and I decided to explore the cornfield. It was a bored teenagers' game, something we did to prove our bravery to each other. There were stories, of course, rumors of strange things happening at night, of figures appearing between the rows of corn. But we were young, and like any young people, we didn't really believe in those stories. We believed we were invincible. We met at midnight with flashlights and nervous laughter. We entered the cornfield, the sound of dry leaves rustling around us, the soft dirt crunching beneath our feet. There were 4 of us: me, Lucas, Mateus, and Clara. Lucas led the group, and he always had that defiant attitude of someone who wasn't afraid of anything. Mateus followed right behind, mocking our unease. Clara was beside me, holding my hand tightly. It was dark, even with the flashlights, and the dense rows of corn made every path look the same. It felt like we were entering a labyrinth, an endless maze filled with shadows. After walking for a while, we started hearing something. A strange rustling that wasn't coming from us. A low, constant sound that seemed to follow our steps. Lucas laughed, saying it was just the wind, but Clara was visibly uncomfortable. I began to feel something too, like pressure, a weight that seemed to accumulate in the air. And then we saw it. A figure stood ahead of us, in the middle of the cornfield. It wasn't an ordinary scarecrow. It was a man, or something like it, made of straw. He was tall, much taller than any of us, and his body was grotesque and thin, with arms dangling awkwardly at his sides. His head was large and covered by a tattered straw hat, and where his eyes should have been, There were only dark, empty holes that seemed to absorb the light from our flashlights. We stood there, frozen, staring at this figure that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. "Is this some kind of joke?" Lucas shouted, trying to sound confident, but his voice trembled. Mateus laughed nervously, saying that someone must have put that scarecrow there to scare us. But something about that straw man filled me with a deep sense of dread. It wasn't just the fact that he was there, suddenly blocking our path. It was the way he seemed to lean forward, as if he were watching us, as if he were aware of our presence. "Let's get out of here," Clara whispered, and I could hear the fear in her voice. She was right. Something wasn't right. But before we could turn, it moved. It was a slow movement, as if gravity was pulling every part of its body. The straw man took a step forward, and a dry sound, like the creaking of breaking branches, echoed around us. The straw hat swayed slightly, and in that moment, time seemed to stop. No one moved, no one even breathed. The light from my flashlight trembled, and those empty eyes now seemed fixed directly on me. I felt an intense cold take over my body, as if I were being drained of all warmth, of all hope. Mateus screamed, breaking the oppressive silence, and that scream was like a signal for all of us. We ran. We ran like never before. The sound of dry leaves breaking under our feet, the corn scraping against our legs and arms. Clara didn't let go of my hand, and I pulled her as we ran, feeling the terror increase with every step. I looked back only once, and I saw the figure of the straw man still standing there, motionless, but now his arms seemed to be stretching, as if they wanted to reach us, as if they had a life of their own. We burst out of the cornfield, gasping for breath, and fell onto the dirt road, our hearts pounding as if they were about to explode. Lucas and Mateus were right behind us, also completely out of breath, their expressions a mix of fear and disbelief. No one said anything for a while. We just stood there, trying to catch our breath, trying to understand what had just happened. Finally, Lucas broke the silence, saying that it must have been a prank, some kind of trick set up by a farmer to scare kids. But none of us believed him. We had all seen the straw man move. We had all felt that presence, that empty gaze full of something that shouldn't exist. We walked home in silence, and we never spoke of that night again. But I have never been able to forget. That same night, after I got home, I went to my bedroom window, looking out at the cornfield in the distance. The wind was blowing, making the stalks sway, and for a moment, I swear I saw something there. A tall, motionless figure that seemed to be watching me, even from afar. I blinked, and it was gone, as if it had never been there. Since then, I have always avoided going near that field, especially at night. Clara moved away a few months later, and I know it was because of that night. Lucas and Mateus also never wanted to talk about what happened again. What we saw, that straw man, was not just a simple scarecrow. There was something more about it, something ancient, something that seemed to feed on our fear, that wanted to see us run, that wanted to hunt us. To this day, when the wind blows strong and the rustling of the corn leaves can be heard, I feel that same cold, that feeling that something is waiting for me. Someday, maybe I'll have the courage to go back there, to face whatever that straw man is. But for now, I prefer to avoid cornfields. I prefer to forget. Because I know that if I go back, it will be there, waiting, with its empty eyes and straw arms ready to move again. It was after a heavy storm that the next morning came, with a gray sky and the damp earth still full of puddles. I got up early to check the damage in my father's cornfield. Whenever it rained like that, we had to see if the stalks had survived the strong wind and if the corn was still in good condition. It seemed like a normal day, a bit foggy, with the smell of wet earth filling the air. But there was a strange tension, something I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe it was the absence of birds that would normally already be chirping at that time of morning. As soon as I reached the field, I noticed something different. In the middle of the cornfield, among the uniform rows and the washed-out green of the wet leaves, there was something that shouldn't have been there, a perfect circle. I stopped, my feet sinking slightly into the mud, and stared at that formation. All the stalks were bent in one direction, forming a circle that was so symmetrical it seemed impossible to be made by nature or the wind. No corn stalks were broken, only bent with precision, as if something had passed through there and simply ordered them. My first thought was that some machine had caused it, but then I realized that the circle was right in the middle of the field, too far for any vehicle to have passed without leaving marks. The area around the circle was untouched. I took a deep breath, an uncomfortable feeling growing inside me, something beyond strangeness. It was as if I were intruding on a forbidden place, a place where I wasn't welcome. I decided to enter the circle to see it up close. As I approached, a chill took over me. It wasn't just the temperature of the air. It was a deep cold that seemed to come from within, as if my body was instinctively reacting to danger. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the best of me. I stepped into the center of the circle and immediately felt an intense dizziness. It was as if the world around me was spinning, the rows of corn becoming blurry, and a buzzing sound began in my ears, like something vibrating in the air. I knelt down, trying to steady myself, and that was when I heard it. It was a very low sound, almost a whisper. It sounded like laughter, a distant noise that came from all directions. I looked around, but everything was quiet and empty. The buzzing in my ears got louder, and I felt a pressure, as if the air was closing in on me, suffocating me. It was hard to breathe, and fear began to grow. I tried to leave the circle, but my movements were slow, as if something was holding me back. Finally, with great effort, I managed to stand up and get out of that cursed circle. As soon as I took the first step out, the buzzing disappeared. The air returned to normal. The intense cold began to dissipate, and my breathing became easier. I turned to look at the circle, and it was there, still silent, but there was something about it, something that seemed to be watching me, even without eyes or form. I felt a presence, a sense that I should not have entered there. I ran back home, my heart still racing. I told my father about the circle, but he laughed, saying it was probably just the wind or some animal. But I knew that wasn't the case. Something had passed through that field during the night, something that had made that circle with impossible precision. Something that was there waiting to be seen. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that perfect circle and felt that pressure, that sense of the air squeezing me. At some point, I heard a noise coming from outside my bedroom window, a soft rustling, like something moving through the cornfield, something that wasn't human. I got up slowly and went to the window. The field was dark, only the moonlight illuminating the rows of corn. And then I saw it. Right in the middle of the field, where the circle was, there was a faint light, a bluish glow that seemed to pulse, as if the field were breathing. I felt paralyzed, my eyes fixed on that light that grew and shrank slowly. It was mesmerizing, but at the same time deeply disturbing. That light wasn't natural, and I knew, deep inside, that it shouldn't have been there. Suddenly, the light went out, as if it had never existed. The field returned to silence, but the rustling continued, moving towards my window. I felt my entire body freeze, fear taking hold of me in a way I had never felt before. I closed the curtain and went back to bed, curling up, trying to ignore the sound that seemed to be getting closer and closer. The next morning, I went to the field with my father. He was tired of my stories and decided to check for himself. When we got to the circle, it was there exactly as I had described it. But something was different. In the center of the circle, the ground was burned. It wasn't an ordinary burn. It was a pattern, something that looked like it symbolized a drawing, something ancient and impossible to understand. My father remained silent for a long time, then simply told me not to tell anyone, that it was just superstition, something we shouldn't mess with. But I knew it wasn't that simple. That circle, that light, and the feeling of something watching me, it was all real, and something inside me told me it wasn't over. In the back of my mind, I knew this was only the beginning, that the presence was still there, waiting for something, maybe waiting for me. Since then, I have avoided that field. Every time the wind blows and the leaves rustle, I feel that same chill, that same sense that something is there, in the shadows watching me. Some nights, I still wake up to the sound of the rustling leaves, the buzzing in my ears, and see the bluish light flickering through the window. I close my eyes and try to ignore it, hoping that dawn will come soon, hoping that somehow it will go away. But deep down, I know it will always be there, waiting for the right moment to return. And I am afraid that next time, it won't just be a light or a whisper. I'm afraid that whatever is hiding in that field will finally decide to come out of the shadows.